outstretched hand.
Hi, this is Max from Belonging Education, and welcome to episode 9, where I was so lucky to interview author, illustrator, painter Cozbi Cabrera. Cozbi was born and raised in Brooklyn. She studied at the Parsons School of Design in Paris and New York. Cozbi was driven by a desire to honor her Honduran heritage, to build authentic representation for Black and Brown children, which she talks about in our interview. Muñeca designed and crafted handmade cloth dolls, muñecas, which were works of art so deeply loved that they started being collected by celebrities and featured nationwide. And that artistry led to her books and putting her art into the world. And Cozbi then became a Caldecott and Coretta Scott King and Cyber Honor winner. She creates amazing books and stories like My Hair is a Garden, Me and My Mama, which you should definitely get. It belongs in libraries and homes everywhere. Brown Girl, she illustrated with Leslie and Honore. And they're just beautiful books that invite young readers to celebrate who they are, honor where they come from, and feel completely at home in their own skin and how they walk through the world. I was so excited to talk to Cozbi. I told her I think I left here with several pages of notes, just wonderful wisdom and things that I think every teacher could learn from about belonging and school belonging. So I hope you enjoy. Please share this, reach out. Let me know if you ever want to talk about school belonging. Inclusive too, that when we're thinking about making expectations clear, we have to be ready to include everyone.
Yes. And meet them where they are. Like, for example, calling a child by their name when you're first introduced to them. It's like you always see like this light of recognition somehow. It's like that you took the time to remember my name, even in this short period of time. It's like their eyes light up, you know? And so I think like it's the kind of the job of every educator really to be able to identify each child as their unique person with all of their strengths and peculiarities, and to just be able to take note of that, you know, and if there is something that is unique to them, you know, to be able to say that in a private conference that you've noticed something. It's like that is just very endearing to a child, you know, because I always say, you know, there's something eternal in children, but there's also something very brand new. And so they're here in this world, you know, brand spanking new, and things are in development and information. And so that sensitive identity, it's like you give them a little piece of the puzzle for themselves when you're able to notice those little things that could only happen by way of careful and considered observation. To take the time to do that, you know, and to point that out. And then, you know, on down the road in the course of, you know, time, to be able to make a public record of that in front of the child's peers. Like there's something about that as well, where then everybody in a room gets to carry that, you know.
When you think of public record, what do you think? What does that look like?
So like, you know, like, you know, oh, Max is so great at, you know, we're going to have him do X, Y, and Z, you know.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
I've seen some amazing teachers who will say like in math, like, this is Cozbi's math rule. Even if it's some math rule that's been around, I mean, it's been around for the ages, but now in this room, because Cozbi mastered it or discovered it, we're stamping it because it reminds us that she's so good at this.
At this, you know, peculiarity.
I'm glad. I love the eternal and brand new piece. Because we are part of constellations. And I think of both. I'm reaching for Brown Girl, Brown. I'm reaching for Me and My Mama. I'm reaching for My Hair is a Garden. There's something in your books And of course, I'm wondering about your daughter, your family, your relationships. But there's something of just by being in this world, in your full beauty, you belong. Like I read it when I was rereading last night to prepare, I get the sense of like even belonging to yourself is almost a gift. I don't know if you're thinking of that when you make your work, but there's something so gorgeous in your work of like the way you honor just how someone is showing up, like just that someone has what they have or exists. And is that, I guess, do you think of that consciously as you're creating? Is it just who you are, your orientation?
I just think, like, for example, we take a walk in nature, and it's like there's so much breathtaking beauty. Sometimes it just washes you over, it's like you may even like see or feel a tear trickling the corner of your eye. You're so taken by it. But to think that just exists. And the fact that it has existed before you walked into it to kind of bear witness, And so this notion of bearing witness, I'm feeling like that's a divine privilege. It's like I notice, like I just remember my daughter's kindergarten class, they were going on a field trip and the teacher wanted to do a local walk. And so she pointed out, we're on 17th Street and we have to go to 22nd Street. And so what do you think the next block will be? And so the kid said, 15th. Oh, we're on 17th. And so one little boy said, 18th. And she didn't acknowledge that he got it. And so the next block, she tried it again. We're now on 18th. What do you think it's next? 12th, 11th, no. And he said 19th, and I'm doing this wrong because they were walking in descending order. And so there was a little more thought process. And so I just thought, wow, that's just so amazing, and instead what she wound up doing was throughout the entire course of this, chiding him for being outside of the line. And I had to note that there were other boys that didn't look like him that were way outside of the line and never got called out. And I just thought, wow, it's like, that's like such a miss,
These are the moments we get so deep and then we're making headlines for disproportionality or over disciplining. But it starts with what you're talking about.
The seed,
right. If we're not attuned to the gifts, and even if this child you're talking about wasn't right, it doesn't even sound like she was attuned to him either which way.
No, not at all. But I think also sometimes have to back up the truck a little bit and recognize that teaching is really a vocation. And some are called and some are sort of occupying, and so you hear those conversations where, I'm, 10 more years and I'm into retirement, that kind of conversation where it's all rinse and repeat and just getting through the day. But that's not true of every educator. Some are really called and they sense their calling. And they bring something almost magical into the everyday routine.
And I think we have those, maybe they're on the newer side of teaching, who they might come with the mission, but the system as it currently lives, this focus on standardized tests or accountability, so-called accountability, feeds the wrong part of the beast. So you have people who maybe are developing their mission or orientation and they go to kind of speed and efficiency over experience and relationships.
Because it's a dance, isn't it? So the larger demands and the oftentimes counter to, what is really what you're trying to deliver, which is a love of learning, to kind of like point that way, like what learning can open up, and so there's a tremendous amount of call it the dark nights of the soul, and the the nights of pondering to figure out how to still not have that, even though it seems like it's coloring the entire page. Still not have that be the be all and end all of time together. It's Hollywood, but I think remember that scene there was a movie called To Stir with Love with Sidney Poitier, and he's entered into a very challenging situation. The school culture is such that nobody gives to the pupils, and so it's like, so in that world, and that's what a classroom is. It's a world within a world, and the school is a world within a world. And it's all like nesting dolls.
Yeah, but I mean, if you could emulate Sidney Poitier both in the movie and in real life, like when you talk about purpose or mission, but you're right, we're always entering into these worlds that we haven't created as educators.
Right, where there's absolute, at times, even resistance to the good thing. As opposed to support for it. You know?
But I love that Mary Poppins idea, and that you showed up, you gave them everything, but I also imagine you probably could do that 5 days a week. This could be who you could show up as always.
I could very easily. I could.
And so I wonder, not to frustrate, not to put you into a frustration point, but how, as an artist and a creator, how do you maybe how have you parented your own child in a school that really is very kind of formal literacy and math focused? I mean, I know you're raising an artist too, or a musician. How do you do that dance when so much time is spent at school with very limited focus?
So I would take a more of a Leonardo da Vinci approach to this notion that all of the disciplines really are related. And I think, if anything, that's really the heart of learning, to know that I think we very carefully compartmentalize that this is STEM and this is art and but the reality of the matter is they're all dancing together, swimming, beautifully as like molecules in the atmosphere. We've decided to categorize and compartmentalize and segment. There was this really great book when I was having a little difficulty with what was going on with my child in her school when we moved to Evanston, and it was called Build a Better Teacher. The A in better was A+++. I loved it. It started by detailing, and I'm paraphrasing, the journey of these like two math teachers who were teaching math in such a way that they made use of the entire classroom. So nobody got to say, I'm not good at it, or this person's better at it. So what she would do is everyone had a turn in rotation at the board to solve a problem. And then there were things that kids maybe might have gotten in the first grade, and now they're in the third grade, and they didn't remember that bit. So the mechanical function of, I don't know, multiplication of like multiple digits. They forgot that you had to move it over one column on the second row. Like it was a mechanical function.
Just the place value part.
Right, exactly. So they didn't have that full understanding. And so they would make mistakes. So she would have them all go to the board, bringing their own level of understanding and remembrance and whatever, and just solve the problem on the board. And understanding that nobody got to do it wrong, even if they didn't come out with the right answer, because they were demonstrating these mistakes that are easy to many. And so the class could then say, well, this is what you needed to do here as a group to sort of like problem fix it. And everybody got to get carried along. And so anyway, so fast forward, there were now two teachers, doing math this way. And then they took a trip to Japan, and they noticed that it was a similar approach. where it's like the classroom got to get all of the major mistakes exposed, and everyone, even the advanced students were able to anchor their knowledge a bit, and the ones who perhaps were struggling, they got to go through the process of, understanding a little better. And so everybody got carried along.
Does that line up with sort of the crit piece, or when you're working in a methods class, when you say like, hey, everyone gather around, let me show you something? Is that more of the flow that you experienced at Parsons or in training?
So Parsons, I had two very different experiences at Parsons.
Okay.
I went to the Parsons in Paris, and we had an amazing director there, James Parker.
Okay.
He had come out of the Bauhaus, and the Bauhaus was sort of a collection of architects and historians and studio artists and textile people and the works,
Mm-hmm.
And they all found commonality in a conversation
Mm-hmm.
about their disciplines. So they were very, very much moved by this ethos of confluence, the meeting places where everything kind of connects, Okay. Yeah. So like, for example, I might be using the materiality of paint, and you might be weaving or hand dyeing materials, but color theory, we all share and have that in common, and we can have conversation about that. So getting back to building a better teacher, these two teachers now were in conversation with each other. And so there were things that worked in one classroom that they could share with another. And then they went to Japan, and they noticed that there was a similar approach in this classroom the school that they were visiting, where the teachers actually had a period of debrief daily about what went right, what went terribly wrong. And in those conferences and conversations, people felt supported. They got new ideas and new approaches that they could then sort of go to apply. And so they asked the Japanese teachers, where are you getting this from? Because this is what we've been doing intuitively. And they said, doi. And they thought, oh, is doi a Japanese figure? What is that? And it turns out it was John Dewey.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning that we actually devised this on an ivory tower academic level.
Right, from our backyard in Chicago, but it was based on experience.
But it never got trickled into the schools or into the teaching, because mastering a subject is very different from teaching it.
Yes.
And there's an actual craft to teaching.
You talked about it being vocation, but if you're not taught to pull out your why and who you are and connect it to the technical, then the technical gets really boring.
You wind up having people going through the motions.
Yes.
So then there'll be an adoption of a particular thrust, like the school administration will say, we want to foster a sense of belonging. And so they wind up checking the boxes, never really capturing the spirit of what's trying to, or the reason why it has value. Like that goes missing. And then there's just the mechanical, so like motions bit.
And sometimes when I talk to teachers, I have to say the poster all that says we all belong isn't doing what we think it's doing. And sometimes I do think that's sort of offensive to people, because they might have spent $15 on that poster. They might have searched the internet for an hour for that poster. And it's like, this isn't to hurt your feelings, but this is to talk really honestly about the difference between a symbol and lived experience. Right.
It's true.
But are you a trained educator also?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I did do a stint as a substitute teacher. So that was a period of like 2 weeks. And day one was like very chaotic. I remember going home, you know, the dark night of the soul there, going home like, oh my gosh, what do I do? You know, and then I thought, oh, you know, it's like there's this one pocket in the classroom that is just so out of control that I can't deliver what I have tried to give them. And so I said, okay, I know what I need to do. I need to reassign seats.
Restructure.
Right, break it up, you know. Yeah. And then the next day, it's like, you know, I said, you've got your new seat assignments. Everyone's like, oh, you know. And there's something about a teacher coming in, because we talk about co-creating. There's something about simply building a road so that they can pass through, as opposed to asking them on their travel to stop and pause and build a road with us. It's like children appreciate that there's a road there for them.
Sometimes we ask them to do very adult work, and they don't have, like you're saying, the roadmap, the experience. And it's to go to your point earlier with the field trip, the children that tends to burden the most is the children who come, who look so different than we do. It's like no child with totally different lived experience is going to be able to walk in the shoes that I walked in. That's not fair to put that expectation in. But I was going to say, one day of chaos is pretty good, because I think it took me 3 years to feel like I actually had some structure.
Oh, so at the end of the day, we had such a great day, and they all walked away feeling so supercharged and excited and enthused, you know. Yeah. And then the next day, one of the very troubled girls came in. She had been absent on day 2, and she looked to start the ruckus with the person beside her, and she realized it was one hand clapping.
Oh, interesting.
And she tried again, you know, and nobody was taking the bait, you know. And then she just settled in. She just settled in to have her day at school, as opposed to, because the dynamic has shifted.
And you were providing security,
Yeah, the classroom is a living dynamic, you know. There's so many ways to adjust the levers for that. They're people. They're just little people in the classroom.
One thing you were making, going back to the math, was with those teachers tackling an error. You're like, what I hear you talking about is like normalizing that our brains play tricks on us sometimes, or our brain, like the human brain is a weird thing. And sometimes we remember and sometimes we don't, or one brain might or one brain on. And that's so leveling for children, because there's a rat race of who's going to be the smartest or the best at this. It's very competitive sometimes. It's like, actually, we're all made up of the same things, and similar parts work the same way. And that's so humanizing. I want to get back to, do you remember from your own childhood, like going to school and saying, I really belong here, or like I really noticed that this educator is working to make sure that I belong? Like, do you have those moments in your memory?
I think that I simply understood that I belonged. And we came from very different backgrounds, all of the the class, we had our Irish families, our immigrant brown families, our African American families, our Italian families, but entering into the classroom, it's like almost the classroom became the great leveler in a sense. And because there was an expectation for everybody. I think the one thing they might have gotten wrong was they divided the groups between faster processors and maybe the slower processors is maybe what they, and so you had like for every grade 2 different, a ones group and a twos group. And it was understood that the ones group was the smarter one. But they've done studies about that too. Like if you just have the kids believe that they are in fact the advanced group, they kind of rise to the occasion, you know?
Yes, yes, yes. But you remember that, and you remember, was it pretty, aside from the ones in the twos, but the sense
Yeah.
of we're all part of the school,
Yes, very
did it
much.
hold up throughout the year? It wasn't.
It did.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
did. It
yeah.
did.
And
Yeah.
were families involved in the school? Was it a very like
So everyone knew, just even during pickup, that was a time when pickup wasn't subcontracted.
mhm,
It's like Mrs. Applewade, and you could find all of the and sometimes the parents at pickup, they would talk a little bit with each other while they were waiting for their children.
mhm,
But it was always a sense of families.
mhm,
There were a lot of sibling groups, so that also the sense of continuity. There were four
mhm.
in my family, so
Wow.
I could get the warning about the teacher ahead of us.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then the warning would shift as the year went on because, Mr. Clinton isn't as strict as he appeared to be.
Mhm,
He actually
mhm,
has a sense of humor and
Yep.
loves to tell stories. So yeah, just a sense of being a part of an actual community.
Do you feel like your identity as an artist was nurtured? Was it clear that this
It
was
was
going to be your
very
path?
early recognized, acknowledged publicly, and put to work.
Okay.
So I wound up decorating all of the classrooms. Yeah, I was set to the task of decorating the classroom. Or
Okay.
if there was a mural that needed to be drawn or painted, they asked me to do it. So yeah, that it did get identified very early and encouraged and supported in some ways.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then what about art that is inherently focused on this? I mean this in the most respectful way possible,
Yeah.
not reductive, but like
Mhm.
in the inner beauty or
Mhm.
bringing the inner out. When I look at your stuff, there's something so celebratory about the
Mhm.
soul or humanity in it.
Yeah.
Did you did that start to form early on, or was that?
Mm, it's really interesting. I think that each child, and each creative person, ultimately will define themselves as, working in the creative arts, has to pinpoint what is uniquely theirs in order
Mm-hmm,
for it to ring true with a sense of power and authenticity.
mm-hmm,
Um, and so that's a kind of coming to oneself moment in order to be in recognition of that.
mm-hmm,
But oftentimes it starts off with a little friction. Like so I was designing for music for years, and then I would be going to these antique shows, and I'd see these dolls from yesteryear, and I
mm-hmm,
noticed that the Black ones oftentimes were very gross representations and out and out stereotypes. And I
mm-hmm,
remember walking out of there and thinking, just from an anthropological perspective, if like the earth should blow up tomorrow,
mm-hmm,
and then all we could dig up that represented people that looked like me or my relatives or some of my neighbors, if that's all we could dig up, I'd be very discontented with that. And so
mm-hmm,
I began to make the sort of dolls, for example, that I wanted to see. And then I think in terms of like, just even when I'm painting, like paint the pictures that I would like to have seen perhaps growing up.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we just had one of those books in my childhood. It was Jack Keats,
Peter's chair or any
Snowy
day.
Day. Snowy Day.
Snowy day. Yeah, yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, my 20-year-old just found his Ezra Keats collection. Was he from Brooklyn? I forget. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember. I know that, but yeah, I haven't held on to it.
Did you get pulled into the Mac Barnett conversation?
It's very interesting because I thought Matt was saying a number of things in his statement. And I thought that some of it was something of an internal within the kidlit community,
Mm-hmm.
like an internal critique
Mm-hmm.
that then sort of like went into the outside world, spread like wildfire, and people came in, oftentimes pulling out bits of the conversation, perhaps even out of context. I thought he said something like 99% of the books are trash or something to that effect. You know, and there was a huge pushback because at the time of book banning, at the time of perhaps people not even believing that representation is a distinction worth considering. How dare you say this thing, you know? And so maybe it was a little misplaced in terms of the times that we're in. But I think there was something that he was trying to convey, because there is craft and there is, in essence, oftentimes we're not mindful. We just want to get it out into the world and not necessarily getting it out as its best delivery, just out, you know. So, to give you an example, I painted something very recently. I won't name the book. And then Kirkus did a review and said her hazy impressionistic paintings using a muted palette. The book was so high chroma in color, and the scanning did not happen at a high fidelity level.
Oh, okay.
And I pushed back a bit, and the publisher's like, "It's wonderful, we love it," you know. And I'm like, "But it doesn't look like the original art." The original art had gone to China, gotten scanned there, and then was sent directly back to me. And so they thought that the reproduction was lovely, but it looked nothing like what I had delivered. And they were not wiser for it.
How does that feel? That must feel so crummy.
Because it's like a lot of life force gets involved in delivering. So the point I'm saying is there is an absence of standards in some publishers. That's not true of every imprint. Some imprints, they really care about the quality of the writing and the reproduction and the art, and they want to send an amazing book out in the world.
It is clear that you work diligently, that you craft your writing before it goes out in the world. So that's why I say when you're talking about your art too, that it must feel so crummy when something comes back and it doesn't reflect the labor you put in.
It's a disconnect in a sense, because there was something that you in anticipation were delivering and it didn't land, but everyone's thrilled anyway. And so, and no one cares, you know. So getting back to, if I can sort of interlope that with the Matt Barnett statement, you know, like sometimes even typography, like the craft of typography, it's like some imprints don't care, you know, about the letter forms and the negative spaces in between. It was like, whatever, you know.
When you're illustrator and writer, do you have more of a say?
So in the case of me and Mama, I was just allowed to do what I do. You know, but in other projects, depending on the team, there could be a lot of interference. And a lot of resistance to like things you instinctually know would make something so much better, and there's no listening for that, you know. It becomes difficult, you know.
You know, last question is, I always think of the magic wand question. You're about to send your daughter out into the world. As far as that sense of belonging, if you could wave the magic wand you'd want for young people to carry with them, if they find themselves having to work a little bit or develop a space where they belong. Like,
I think that's the juice of life, you know. And as I described to you regarding going into the antique shows and not seeing what made me happy or made me feel even validated as a human being walking in this earth, and then sort of like being compelled to fill that gap. I think that's the stuff of growth, really. I think about, you know, I checked the box for Parsons that said Paris, and there I went to Paris, and I couldn't speak a word of French, and you know, it's like I had $200 that somehow or another in the American Express traveling checks that were supposed to last me the entire academic year. You know, just no plan, just like, you know, got off at the airport and realized that it was 4:00 in the morning and I hadn't planned past what I would do next, you know, and having to construct a thought, and my mind goes blank under that type of pressure. And I just think of all of what shows up often as friction and inconvenience and an unsettled feeling. It's like those are the greatest and the finest opportunities for growth, you know. And so here I'm using that as an example because I'm now in a new environment where all of my old reference points, all of the things that I could sleepwalk through because, you know, there was a nod of understanding on the other side. And so it didn't force me to have to communicate better or, you know, to use my body language because the language wasn't there. It's like, it just requires more of you. And it may seem as if, oh, what a burden. It's really not. It's such an opportunity. It's an opportunity to kind of like polish off, if you could use Aladdin's lamp, polish off the lamp to a gleam and a glisten, rather, that would not have been necessary, rather, if everything was just okay.
And for the 7-year-old who's doing that, what I'm inferring is keep doing that. Even when the adult isn't receiving it, keep navigating through that. I love that.
Because in the end, it's what it's making of you. You know, and we always like to think that, oh, we're, you know, have no agency, we whatever. And it's like, even the stories we love the most are the stories where it appeared as if there was no power, no agency, no, you know, and yet something inside of the character, you know, there was like a little something that got lit that enabled them to act it with boldness and with courage. You know, even if there were no permissions. Yeah.
We talk about, you know, so-and-so was born and so-and-so died and someone lived his life. But we're so awful at talking about what actually happened during that life. But what was actually, what happened between those two bookends?
The learning moments.
You're incredible. I'm learning so much about you. I think this is the first time that I'm like taking notes during our conversation. So I'm so grateful. Is there anything you're working on now that you can share, or is it kind of?
I'm painting a book now that's called A First Library. Oh, wow. It's written by Brittany J. Thurman.
Okay.
And so that should be out next year, and then. Right after I finish painting that, I'm jumping into Me and Papa. That's a companion to Me and Mama.
Oh my gosh, that's very exciting. Well, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. Your energy, your art is energy giving, life giving. So
thank you.
Put out into the world.
Outstretched hand, smiling eyes, comfort humming through the halls, tracing lines I used to hide.